Welcome back, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Encouraging Teens on the Music Scene. My name is Bea.
And my name is Joy, and today we are joined by John Snyder, who's held an insane number of positions in the music business, from publishing, managing, and producing some of your favorite artists to teaching and mentoring at a collegiate level.
Just to start off the episode on music business, could you tell us a little bit about your background or people you've worked with?
I was a musician from the time I was probably 6 and made the practice piano and trumpet, and then went to music school. I was in bands through high school, bands in college, worked my way through college playing in a band. We played all over the world in the summers, got kind of lucky about that. And then I went to law school after music school at the recommendation of a teacher. Long story, but I'll tell it some other time. And so I did graduate from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and went to New York within a month after that to work at CTI Records. Creed Taylor, who was a great jazz producer at the time, and took the bar that fall, passed the bar, thank God, and ran his publishing companies and then started selecting songs for his artists, and then started editing and suggesting concepts for records and suggesting artists to sign. So I kind of moved into that area, but also got to go into a lot of other areas in the music business. I did distribution, marketing, international licensing. Manufacturing was interesting because there's all the pressing plants and cassette manufacturers and printing plants and all this. It was a very complex process. So I did that for a couple of years and worked for Herb Alpert and Jerry Moss at A&M Records, running a small jazz label called Horizon. And at A&M, I worked with artists at CTI, I worked with Freddie Hubbard, Ron Carter, George Benson, Diodato, Paul Desmond, Stanley Turnantine, Hank Crawford, a bunch of Joe Farrell, Hubert Laws, bunch of guys. They're all really great musicians. And then at A&M, I worked with. I took Chet with me, and I was trying to sign George, but ended up signing Ornette and David Liebman and Thad Jones, Mel Lewis, Sonny Fortune, some others. And so I was there 2 years, and then I started my own company, and with their help, and recorded Ornette, Chet Baker, Jim Hall, Andrew Hill, James Blunt Ulmer, Gil Evans, people like that. And I got into the reissue business in the middle 80s, CDs, revolution, so I did a lot of records, reissues of analog tapes, hundreds of those and hundreds of compilations, everybody from Aretha to Miles to Elvis to, just a bunch of people. And a lot of rock stuff with Jefferson Airplane and Lou Reed and Mingus, just a lot of records. So I've produced probably 350 new recordings and maybe 400 reissues and compilations from CDs, CDs, and did some management, did international touring with a number of artists. And in 2004, I went to Loyola University in New Orleans and ran their music industry studies department the last 15 years. And I retired from there last May, 2019. And here I am.
We just need a minute to digest.
Yeah.
I recorded a lot of people that were stars who I could talk into recording on my records, like Eric Clapton or Stevie Wonder, or Mavis Staples did a couple of records with her. She was great. Did a lot of records with Etta James. She was great. She got her first Grammy. Her first Grammy was Mystery Lady, which is a collection of songs dedicated to Billie Holiday, and that won a Grammy. That was her first. That was a good record. You'll have to come see this stuff. I got 12,000 LPs downstairs.
Oh my gosh.
And, probably 6,000 CDs, thousands of cassettes and analog tapes and high-8 VHS, all kinds of stuff that I would record record dates back in the day. I was quick to do that. and made some early DVDs on bringing people into the recording process, just filming the whole date, and just thought it was interesting to let people behind the scenes, and always trying to encourage younger people to make music, not only because creative expression is the most personal thing you can do, but it also is you have the ability to make wealth out of your imagination thanks to
Mhm.
the operation of copyright law. So most musicians have this kind of unique ability to, well, they're kind of they have the traits of an entrepreneur. I mean, you're
Mhm.
good examples. You don't want to work with somebody else. You can create stuff. You can solve problems creatively. You're not afraid of performing, going on the stage and taking risk. You're risk averse, but you're also risk managers. And you're stubborn, and you don't take no for an answer, and you can communicate your ideas effectively. I mean, you have the qualities and traits of a person who can run their own business. And since you're creating intellectual property through the exercise of your imagination, you're kind of making wealth out of your imagination, which is a pretty big skill set. And and so you kind of got all the cards except one, and that's the business. You don't really understand how to monetize your passion for what you do. And so once you understand that, and it's not difficult, you kind of say, oh, and so if you write songs, you are a music publisher by the operation of federal copyright statutes. It's not a box you check or a registration you file. It's just a consequence of what you did. So as soon as you render an original idea in a tangible form, whether it be music, recordings, sculpture, visual arts, literature, audiovisual art, and then there are other categories of copyright protection like architecture, pantomiming, choreography, because you can write it down. But so those first five categories are those categories of composition and sound recordings, literary, audiovisual, and visual. Those five things are all creative works, and they all come with the same five rights. As soon as you render something in one of those areas that can be considered original, the five rights of publication attach. So immediately, just by the operation of federal copyright statutes, you get the right to copy that work, the right to publish that. That's to make copies of it, copyright. And you get the right to share it, to distribute it, to market it, to post it, to give it away, to sell it, whatever. Make it public. You get the right to control the public display of that work, which applies more to sculpture and visual art and audiovisual art. And you get the right to control the public performance of that art. So that's music and theater and that kind of thing, where you get paid for the public performance of your music. And with a sound recording, you get the sixth right of controlling the digital transmission. But all those seven, eight categories of creative work in the copyright statutes have the same five rights, except for the extra one for sound recording. Those are the rights that make you a publisher. So if you make a sound recording, you get those rights automatically. You don't get the rights by registering, you get remedies by registering. So you can't sue somebody for infringement unless you register. So it's a little bit complicated that. And there also you have gains if you register your copyright. You could sue and get statutory damages for for the infringement. So that means that there's money built into the statutes, automatic money, that if somebody infringes and you sue them and their infringement was, say, malicious, like you told them to take it down and they didn't, then it's malicious. You can sue up to $130,000 per infringement. You can't do that unless you're registered. And if you don't register within a certain period of time after publication, you can't collect the statutory damages. So it behooves the young creative person or any creative person to understand how copyright makes them a business. And it comes from Article 1, Section 8 of the federal copyright statutes. And it's there's only 27 words associated with that that power of Congress. They are to promote progress. Congress has the power to promote the progress of science and the useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings or discoveries. And from those 27 words in the Constitution, which lists all the 18 powers of Congress, from those 27 words, you get copyright, patent, and trademark. That is a third of the GDP of this economy. So the founders of that so-called utopian society, which is anything but utopian, but they did have this influence, this effect on individual. They did have they valued the individual creative act to the extent of protecting it and giving it a monopoly for a period of time. And in those days, it was 14 years. Now, this is a flawed document, the U.S. Constitution, as we all know, but it also is amendable. It has been amended to the to positively change some of those negative consequences, but not this. So in this particular phrase, and that creates copyright, patent, and trademark. And so now the creative act is protected, at least in songs and copyright, 70 years after your death. So after the last surviving person who created that work, in the case of a joint work, when that person dies, the copyright duration runs, and it's 70 years. So it's too long, in my opinion, but it is your monopoly on that work. Now, if you want to transfer your rights, that's where the trouble starts. And so you're asked to sign agreements or I agree. When you go to Facebook and join Facebook, you signed I agree. What did you agree to? You don't know because you didn't read it, because you can't read it because it's indecipherable. But what you agreed to was they can use your stuff for any reason without permission, without paying you. Anything you post is not theirs, but they have rights to use it. And so it's kind of the same thing. So if you're a photographer, why would you post your stuff to Facebook? You would post it to your own site and put a link in Facebook. So, but then the curse of the artist is anonymity, not piracy. So until somebody knows who you are, they're not going to steal your stuff. So it's like, what do you do to get awareness? So you're living in the awareness economy. That's the 21st century economy. That's Google. So people now pay for music by listening to it. They pay with their attention because attention is the number one commodity. And the question is, how do you get it if you're a creative person? That's not easy. So you have to have some kind of special sauce, some kind of thing, some kind of story, some kind of connection, some kind of message that you feel compelled to say, to make manifest. And you can do that. You can make a living in the creative economy, and more, that's a big part of it. Everything on the internet is copyrighted. So when I was teaching, a lot of my students who wanted to be musicians and performers fell in love with copyright, the legal issues courses, and became lawyers. And got probably a couple dozen out there, and I've got some successful artists out there too. There's a couple of people they did really well, but most of the kids who graduated over those 15 years, I still keep up with them, and now they're 37 or something, so they're not kids anymore. But they are working in the music industry. They're working in publishing companies or production companies or studios. And the idea is to, I think, make more music and more creative work, because I think more music, more peace.
I was wondering if you could touch a little bit on COVID and how that is going to, or how you think that is going to start affecting the industry and the future of it.
Well, I tell you, it's way affected by it. I mean, first of all, live music is maybe dead for as long as all of next year, in addition to this year. And certainly when it comes back, it will be different. And I don't think you're going to have those 60-person crews anymore. I think that they're going to scale back on some of those bigger productions. I think that by that time, artists will have figured out that there's a whole nother way of connecting on a routine basis with their fans. They've known this because they've had on Facebook and the rest of them for a while now, but now the turn is towards quality AV content for the internet. So you can't just do it from your bedroom. You can't just have it, lame like that. It's got to be a higher level. And so what we realized at Tweed is that what we thought we had was a school, and what we may have now is more of a production facility for AV content for bands. So if a band can come in there and record, visual, you got cameras built in, or you've got camera crew of 2 or 3 people, not many, and you've got the infrastructure to create quality recordings, then you can make beautifully sounding live events, and you could also make them behind the scenes. So I have this idea of, the band shows up. Right, we're going to start a production, and so the crew shows up to set up. There's a couple of people, and then because of COVID, and then you start filming it right away. You got a couple of camera people that have DSLRs and they're filming it. You can get your sound through a boom mic or some other way, but you're really just trying to capture the kind of chaos of the setup. And the person will tell you, "Oh, we're going to set up AK whatever on this guitar player because this we think is going to be best for this acoustic part," and talk about what they're doing and why. And the band shows up and you talk about, "Hey man, what's up?" and you talk. So you shoot the concert, the gig, and the round. It's like a production, not a performance. And then down the hall, they're getting all the audio feeds and they're mixing the record. So now you can have cameras in there. So now you're watching two screens. Here's the performance, and here's the engineer mixing that record. And both can talk to you. You can go to one or the other and chat. And so I see that as kind of a reality TV approach to creating music for AV consumption. Now you could just do a concert. You don't have to get fancy about it or get behind the scenes about it. But then again, nobody does that. So if you're going to do something different, that would be something you could do. So I think that's a big change. I think that if you can make it possible for bands to do that inexpensively, then they can put up a concert every month or every whatever their fans will justify, and they can charge tickets for it, charge money, say 10, $15, sell 500,000 tickets, sell $5,000 worth of merch, and bam, you had a good day. And so, and if you have 20,000 Instagram followers, you could probably make 10 or 15 grand. If you have 40,000, you can make more. And if you have 100 and more thousand, I mean, you're going to make some serious money. So new. And I think that's entrepreneurial. And I think that's the only way bands are going to be able to communicate. So you're going to lose venues, you're going to lose bands, you're going to have all the live sound people are going to get jobs in construction and landscaping. The whole scene changes. Now, meanwhile, streaming is going sky high. So the record companies are probably making $4 million an hour in streaming altogether. I think Universal is making $800 to $9,000 an hour every hour. It turns out to be a lot of money. And so, I'm hopeful that the new copyright, what was it, Music Modernization Act, will provide an avenue or a methodology for artists to improve their percentages of that money. Because right now, I don't think they're really making that. But the publishing business is up, the merch business is up. I think the studio business is going to suffer unless studios can figure out how to make AV content and not just audio content. It's not about audio anymore. It's more than that. Audio is important still and always will be. There's another whole thing now that we've understood that's going to be more in demand.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm curious about the public performance. I mean, if everybody is publicly performing music, that's a right under copyright that belongs to the person who owns that song. So how can I go on my camera here and sing a Beatles song and not be responsible for paying them performance money? So I want to ask people that ask FMBMI, okay, how are we going to do with this? Now, one way to deal with it is that Google pays it or Facebook, the platform pays the royalties. And more Facebook is negotiating deals with publishers, I think, to make it possible for their users to use music that's owned by somebody else without penalty. So that Facebook is paying the owners, just like Spotify pays the publishers. So that's a change. Yeah, I do think that it's opening up the media production business, and from what I can tell, friends of mine that are involved in that, it's happening big time. You can't rent a studio in Nashville right now because every band knows, well, we better get on this. So I wouldn't want to be in the tour bus business at this point, but I wouldn't mind being in the AV production studio business. I think that's going to grow.
Well, it seems like the whole like thing behind what you were saying is like musicians have to be prepared to adapt and ready to adapt to stuff like that. Can you talk
Hmm.
a little bit on how changing with the industry versus like not changing with the industry is like something that musicians have to decide? Like even as far as social media and stuff like that goes, how a few years back we kind of had that push towards everybody jumping on social media to do promotion and things like that. Do you know where the line would be for um I need to go out and change with the industry versus what I'm doing right now is fine?
Well, I don't know many musicians who aren't complaining about not having money. Um, so I'm not sure that what's happening now is actually working, even for the bigger acts. I mean, because if people can't come see you, you can't sell tickets.
Hmm.
Um, I think that there's a rush to get attention. There's a rush to create awareness for the yourself and your music. I think the best way of doing that is making something that's compelling. If your stuff is crap, I can't help you. But there's a seem to be a market for everything. I
Hmm.
mean, long tail tells us that there's a market for everything. Unfortunately, it's the head of the tail that gets the most of the money. Yeah, all the stuff that tails off will pay too, but not very much. So how do you increase that number? How do you increase your uh, awareness in the market? And I don't think you need everybody. So we kind of grew up, or I did, in the mass media world where the artist didn't have a personal relationship with the thing. It was like, in fact, it was that distance that created that want, that desire to know more. And now it's like everything is everything. Everything, everybody knows everything about everybody, and so it's a little bit different. And so you can make actually, if you have 1,000 true fans, you can build. If you have one, it's a one-to-one business, and you can scale it now to the internet. And you have to think of it that way. You have to you have to care about the person who you want to care about you. And I think in that extent, empathy is the value exchange of music. So that's why it's a good thing to do, because if you want somebody to care about your music, which is the most personal thing about you, you have
Hmm.
to care about them. And so there is an empathetic exchange there, at least theoretically. And I think that if you can build that as an artist, one person at a time, and then theoretically that nets out, there's a network effect of that. But if you get 5,000 fans, then you can sell stuff on Kickstarter, or you can communicate effectively with those people, and you can make a living. You do not have to have a number one record. And besides, the odds against that are pretty slim. So you can't that target. You have to aim at the target of who am I trying to communicate with and why, and what about what I'm doing does that effectively. You know, and it's not just like whatever I communicate is should be respected. No, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. It's you're supposed to. I'm not saying you count out to the market that you give the market what they want, but you do have to have some awareness of what people are going to respond to. So how do you get your message across? You know, how do you? It's about the thing you're saying, and it could be entertainment, just sheer entertainment, or it could be more. I got something to say, and you need to listen to it, and it kind of has a deeper effect on you. There's also music for moving. You know, I mean, I've always had a problem with jazz artists who couldn't dance. It's like if you can't dance, how do you pick tempo? I mean, t- music is about movement, isn't it? It's not
Yeah.
just about intellectual comprehension. It also is
Mhm.
something visceral and kind of physical. And so, I'm a big fan of how music and movement kind of interact.
Can you dance?
Oh, yeah, I play a great dancer. No, it depends on how much I've had to drink. No, I don't really engage. I don't play it anymore. I don't worry about it anymore. Do you?
I'm not. Bea's tried to teach me how to dance before, but I'm not a good dancer. I can't do it for some reason.
you
I think
you
you
already
don't.
have the groove in you. You just gotta Gotta let it out, Joy.
It's like a fearlessness. You got to not care what people think about what you.
Maybe Tweed could give like dance lessons.
That's not a bad idea. But I
Yeah.
had one of my students, Charles Lumar, great kid, played bass. He was at a Mardi Gras parade, and he got a call that Solange needed a bass player. And so, can you come to this rehearsal on Saturday? Well, yeah, I guess. And so he goes, and what they're doing is teaching him what steps to move as he's playing. So there is no standing there playing when you're with a band like that. You're moving, and it's choreographed, and it's all about, oh wow, this is great. So he wasn't a dancer, and I said, I bet you're a dancer now, because after 2 years of that, what are you gonna do? So you may only have one or two dances, but you're really good. Yeah.
Yes, I was locked in.
Oh yeah. So that was his thing, he kind of had to do it to get the gig. And the thing was, he said, it's not that I'm the best bass player, because there's guys out there that can play rings around me. It's just that I don't mind dancing and I don't mind getting along with people. I'm just, hanging out. I'm just lucky to be here. And so that
Mhm.
creates a certain attitude of, I don't know, just friendliness that kind of gets you the gig. So it's not good enough to be great. You can't be a jerk. And
Mhm.
so it can be, but it doesn't really help unless you're just ferocious. But even the people who are ferocious, they don't tend to rub it in your face. I mean, they got it, they got it. So I don't know. I think that the today is a very. I think this period of time is a very positive time for creative people, because I think it's more and more a part of the economy, and also it gives everybody a chance to participate. It's like
Mhm.
if you were building online courses at this point, you were good at that, you could beat UGA, because it's how you do it that counts. It's not who you are. And so you define yourself by your actions and your skills and your the appearance that you have on the internet. So
Mhm.
it's everybody can compete. Yeah, everybody can compete, and you got to be that person who gets along with people, who likes other people. If you don't respect others, I think it's going to be hard to get them to respect you.
Yeah. So I was wondering, what are some red flags when working with people in the business? Like, how do you know if the opportunity that they're giving you is not for your best interest, or if they're trying to like just make the most money off of you? Or how can you tell if someone's like really not trying to help you or taking advantage of you?
I think you can just assume that they are. I mean, record companies are terrible about that. Uh, I don't want to be a drag and say any general statements like that. But the thing is that you're the creative person. You're creating the intellectual property, and
Mhm.
then you want help monetizing that property. And so um, uh, you because you get the rights yourself. As soon as you create the work, whatever it is, the rights attach automatically. So now you've got the rights, and you don't have to register them with the Copyright Office just to be able to transfer them. So the point is, when you transfer your rights to somebody else, the right to copy, the right to distribute, the right to publicly perform, which is ASCAP and BMI, and the right to publicly display, which is like a gallery or a movie theater for that art, and then the right to make derivatives. Those are the five rights. And so now you're going to transfer. Derivatives are like samples or a Spanish translation of a song or a movie from a book or something's derived from the original work. And so if you're going to transfer these rights because you can't monetize them, or you're so big that you don't have time to monetize them, then you should write the contract for the transfer of those rights.
Mhm.
So usually the way it works is the record company or the publisher will write the document that transfers your rights to them. So it'd be like you're selling your house to me and I get to write the contract for that house. That's stupid and nobody would do that. But they
Yeah.
do it every day when it comes to intellectual property. So it's not a question of trust. It's a question of they work for you, they're providing a service for you. Now you can trust them to do that or not. And the way you evaluate that is, do they have success at it? You know, it's not, you're not taking, the risk is minimized because you're writing the agreements to transfer the property and you can create the circumstances for that transfer. But record deals are just the opposite. And so you're going to get screwed in a record deal. I don't care who you are, unless you're, you know, Paul McCartney or Beyonce or somebody. They probably get by with it, but everybody else is at the mercy of those terrible deals. And where
Hmm.
they don't have to release your record if they don't want to, they can pay you half the money after a year. They can deduct all the expenses of manufacturing, producing, and marketing that record from your percentage, which is really wrong. And why not off the top? And then we'll split the money instead of I have to pay back all the costs associated with this record out of my 25 cents rather than out of the $5 that we just made. So it's kind of not it's kind of backwards. So the first answer to that question is know your rights, and when you transfer your rights, you write the contract, or your lawyer writes the contract, or you choose the terms of that contract because it's your property. Now you may bump into somebody that says, "Hey, take it or leave it." In which case, leave it. I mean,
Mm.
it's just right off the bat, now you're taking a huge risk. They're
Yeah.
arrogant. They don't believe in you as a person. They see of you as a commodity. And that might work for you as long as they give you $1 million up front. If they give you the money and they got to make back the money, okay, then I'm good. I'll take my million. But you got to know you're not getting any money after that unless there's a big record out of it. I
Mhm.
mean,
Mm.
yes, I've made 350 new records. I don't get any money per year in royalties. And I'm a lawyer.
Crazy.
So I'm going after them, but it's very complicated to do that and expensive. And they're not going to give up.
Hmm.
So, what the big companies do when they buy each other up, they take all the records for a particular payee, somebody who's going to get paid, um, and they lump them together so that all the expenses have to be recouped before any royalties are paid. That's not legit. And the contracts may say it's legit inside of a recording contract, but not between artist and artist. It's just crazy. So now, how do I change that? Expose it on Facebook? I don't think that's going to really help me. So I have to go after them and have to say, I know your game. I'm going to pursue until I win, and I'm going to divert your attention until you lose. And so, which game do you want to play? And they're going to say, do what you got to do, and then you got to file a lawsuit, or you got to insist on an audit that you may not even have the rights to anymore. So it's a game that's stacked against you. And the best thing I can say to a young creative person is don't get caught in that trap. If you see stars in your eyes because of what you think might happen if they take you on, you got to understand that 9 out of 10 of those deals don't work. So they're not going to make money on 9 out of 10. And so what does that tell you about the 10th one that works? It's going to pay the expenses of the 9 that didn't. So even when you win, you lose.
Hmm.
So you don't need those people until you do. And that means if you want to go for pop radio. If you want pop radio and tour support, you need to 500K, then okay, make the deal. But by that time, you would have built up your business to the point where they're going to say to you, we like what you do. We want to be in business with you. What will it take? And then you win. Because if you go there with your hand and your hat in your hand, you're not going to get anything in it except regret. I'm a firm believer in that. You should run your businesses, and if you can't run your businesses because you don't want to understand it, because you don't want to get up, because of whatever reason, then you're going to get taken advantage of. So it's a pick, and I would suggest that you read the book, and there's several books that are fairly easy to read to understand how the business works and how you can make money from monetizing. Educate yourself. Don't look for somebody to come down and save you and make you into a star, because that's not going to happen. I mean, odds are just so against it. It used to be possible. Now the record companies are waiting to see how many Instagram followers you got, how many Facebook friends you got, how many how many streams have you got. I mean, so you have to
Yeah.
be there before they want you there. And by the
Mhm.
way, the people they're going to hire to make that happen for them to make money are just like you, except they're probably biology majors and English majors. So they don't know anything about copyright. They don't know anything about monetization of intellectual property, but they are in the job of handling mechanical licenses, handling sync licenses in a publishing company, that kind of stuff. And I know from my kids that go out there and work in those businesses, the people who work there don't know what they're doing. Some of them do, a lot of them don't. Even the people in charge don't understand copyright. So you've got to be careful who you trust. You know, just because it looks like Sony Music doesn't mean that they have your best interest at heart, which they don't. Major corporations can't have your best interest at heart because their fiduciary duty is to shareholder value. That's a fact. And so they may choose to view it differently. The best way to get shareholder value is to be good to your artist. But generally speaking, it's about profits quarterly reported to them. And if they don't make money that way, it doesn't matter what about the relationship and your sanity. I just think that you're taking a big risk when you sign up with a major company unless you know what you're doing and you've already kind of built your business to the point where you don't really need them. So it's kind of like, okay, why am I doing this? If you make a deal with a major company, you're not going to make much money unless you're kind of a star. So I don't know. I would say that the first thing you should do is put your stuff out, try to make it the best quality you can, share it in every way possible. Don't be precious about it, and improve every day. Make it better. Don't ever be satisfied with it. And the creative person is never satisfied. I've never met an artist and say, "Yeah, that was great." So it's like they say, "Oh, that was good." You know, that's not bad. But everybody knows they've had a good night when everything was perfect. Like, how did that happen? And it's not there every time. It's just there occasionally. But you have to be prepared for it to be there for it to happen. Oh yeah, all athletes will tell you that too. Wow, I don't know what happened, but that was a game right there. And so you know, you're aiming for that kind of. The professional can do something until they can't get it wrong. And an amateur can do something until they get it right. But to be a professional, there's a level you can go to that you just push the button and you're there. Now to go above that to this memorable level, that's hard. And it's not possible to be there every time. But that's what you're striving for. It's like, wow, that was great. And also, you know, the artist has the, you know, healing the sick, feeding the hungry, inspiring people. These are all three things that are important. I think probably feeding the hungry is at the top, but these are things that you can do to make the world better. And it's like you can affect people's point of view and perspective to the point where they see things differently and they actually change. And I think that's a remarkable opportunity for the creative person. I think that's what drives most of them.
So you were speaking a lot about making sure that you already have your business building and going before you start signing to things. So how would you say we should manage ourselves before we get a manager? Or how would you say we should start building that before we're able to turn to other people?
You need some instruction or some knowledge through reading. You need a business plan. You need LLCs, limited liability companies, to insulate your liability. In the state of Georgia, and also in a lot of states, this is true in Louisiana too, if a group of musicians goes out there and takes money for what they do, they have no other entity. They have no LLC or no band agreement, which is typical. Then the state considers them to be a general partnership by default. A general partnership is a legal, it's not a good result for you. It means that you're liable for everybody else's liabilities in that band in respect of the work of that band. And if you want to fire somebody, you have to buy them out. You can't just fire them. So that's what an operating agreement would tell you. It's like, under what circumstances can a person one of the members in this group be associated? Majority vote, you know, 3 out of 5, what? And so Um, what you should do as a young person who's writing music and creating music, you would have an LLC for your publishing company, an LLC for your production company. An LLC is $100 in this state. It's not a difficult thing to do. It can be very complicated, but in your situation, as a sole member of this publishing company, it's not a complex document. I agree. I agree. I agree with myself. I agree with myself. It's not hard. So now you can take that you register your with ASCAP or BMI first before you register your LLC, because they may not take that name, because if somebody else has that name, they can't give it to you. So you would register, and you got to register for ASCAP and BMI, which is you're transferring your right of public performance to them to collect money on your behalf, because you can't drive around the country and go to every TV station and Walmart and collect money for your songs. So they do it through algorithms and through this kind of network effect. So in any event, when you go to register your publishing company with ASCAP or BMI, and they're kind of the same in the sense they dispense the same amount of money a year. There are different ownership structures. One's a nonprofit, one's owned by the broadcasters, but they kind of do the same thing. And it used to be said that jazz guys were better off at BMI, but I'm not real sure if that's still the case. And I'm not real sure if one genre is favorable if one PRO is favorable to a genre. I think they're basically the same. So you pick. I'm going to register with ASCAP. You go to their site, and they'll ask you for 5 names, because they'll take the first name that works. And then when you get that name, now you're going to register as a publisher with ASCAP and as a writer. You can register as a writer for free. It costs money to register a publisher, but you have to do both, because they're not going to pay you both. The publishing rights are separate from the songwriter rights. So you register with ASCAP BMI. Then you go to the state and register that LLC. Then I would register my copyrights in the name of the LLC with the Copyright Office. And that means you have to have a songwriter's agreement with yourself as an individual who wrote that song and your publishing company. Okay, so think of every song you write as having a file. It can be a digital file, but and that file is a copyright registration, a PRO registration, a lead sheet, so somebody else could read that music and record it, perform it, a demo, because people can't really as well as people don't read music and hear it as well as they hear it. So a demo could be just a guitar thing. And then you have a songwriter's agreement between you as the writer, and maybe it's you and Joy have co-written a song. So now you both have publishing companies. You both have to have these songwriter agreements with both companies, so that they can pay you. There's got to be some. If they're gonna pay you for the monetization of your rights, they have to obtain those rights. And also in that file, you would have any licenses. So basically, music makes money in, I would say, 2 major ways: mechanical songs, I'm talking about, sound recordings and visual. So the sound recordings is a mechanical license, and it's a statutory rate. So the rate is set 9.1 cents per unit sold. And then the synchronization license is a negotiated license. So if you want to use my money in your film, you have to come to me as a copyright holder and make a deal with me to do that. And I can say no, and I can say whatever amount of money I want. So, people have turned down giant sums of money for commercial advertising because they just didn't need the money, and they didn't want to have their stuff associated with that product. And so they just say no. But if it's a sound recording, anybody can record a song that's already been made public. If it's been published, then anybody can record it, and they're pursuant to a compulsory license under the statutes, which is a term of art you can read about. But most publishers will give you a mechanical license, because that's how they make their money. They make their money by multiple people recording that song. I mean, every famous song. Think of the covers for Michelle or for any Beatles song. I mean, it's like phenomenal. And probably, I don't know, 5,000 people have recorded that song, and everybody's paying money into it, paying money for using it. So it's going to generate some serious cash. And anyway, that's your folder for each one of your songs. Now, at some point, if you have success, your publishing company is worth probably 6 or 7 times the money you made last year, or maybe the money you made in the previous aggregate 3 or 4 years. So in other words, nobody's going to pay you for your publishing company if you're not making money. So that means you have to monetize those copyrights.
Mhm.
And if you don't know how, then you can say, okay, I will make a deal with Universal Publishing or with whatever publisher, and they will monetize my rights. They will cause people to use my music. They will get it placed in TV and film. That's a possibility. You can also do that yourself to an extent. It's a lot harder because there's more people in between. But if I were a young composer, I'd be looking for young filmmakers. I'd say,
Mm.
hey man, you need music for your, your film. Yeah, but I got no money. Okay, well, let's work it out. And maybe you get some percentage of the back end, or maybe you get a big credit, or maybe you get, I don't know, you maybe just do it for the experience of it because
Mhm.
you think, well, that person got talent. And so they're going to get attention. And in 5 years, they're going to make a major movie. And maybe I get the music. And then you make your money. So besides that, you don't know what you're doing in scoring a film yet. So you got to learn it by doing it. And you look at all the great film scores, you see all the tricks. It's art and a science creating music for film.
Mhm.
The music for E.T. It's a long time ago, but that movie has about 30 um, uh, instances of the theme. When the kids fly off on the bikes and it goes into the big theme. You've heard that. You've heard segments of that 30 times before that moment, and you weren't aware of it because John Williams is a genius. And so by the time you get there, you're lifted off your seat because this all sounds familiar to me. It's like, holy crap,
Mhm.
it's like beautiful and everything is, you have been forced into that view because the composer has got you. And that's talent. So, you should definitely explore all that. As far as your sound recordings go, again, the biggest problem is how do you get people to listen to your stuff? And so you can try to do it with a video. If you make a funny thing or I don't know what, or you just have you get a young filmmaker or some videographer or somebody who's got a sense and they make something that catches on.
Mhm.
But also a continual flow of content. I would say you want to publish, publish, publish. Um, and I think you don't want to publish, bad stuff, but you want to get as good as you can, but you don't want to sit around and wait. And most young people have the problem of never finishing. I mean, a kid told me the other day he'd written the first verse 27 times. What? Before the
Wow.
second verse? Are you kidding me? And so it's like, no, you have to go on with it. And you're never going to get it uh, uh, as perfect as you want. I mean, perfect is an interesting phrase. I mean, it's not unattainable. It just means something that's done. Per from the Latin through, and fect is a past participle of facia, which means to make. So it's something that's made through, something that's complete, it's done. So it doesn't have to be like some glistening thing that is impossible to reach. It's just like finish that. Now, most music producers will tell you, and I'm certainly one of those, that we never finish a record, we just stop working on it because you can keep going forever. But
Mhm.
that's the problem with having a home studio is like, when do you stop? And if you're probably gonna go too far. It's like recording 50 vocal tracks. That's not a smart idea. And usually what happens is it's better the first 3 or 4 times anyway. So I never had more than 3 takes on a song. And
Wow.
Paul Simon taught me a trick about that. He brought in a lyric sheet in a spreadsheet, and so every line of the song was in a row, and there were 3 columns down the left. And so I said, "What's that?" And he said, "We'll do three run throughs, 3 overdubs of the song. I'll just sing it straight through, and you can take notes on that, but you check the things, the phrases you think are good, maybe circle the words that need to be fixed, and then we'll comp a vocal out of those 3 tracks. And if we can't comp a vocal out of that 3 tracks that we like, we throw them away and start over again. We never started over again because out of the 3 tracks, you're going to get something that works. Now, can you keep
Mhm.
doing it differently and better, whatever? Yeah, no. So, my advice is to put it out and create a constant flow. You're constantly communicating and connecting with your fans and the people who care about what you're doing. I think being politically active I don't think we can't separate that anymore. We have to be who we are. And I think being real, being authentic, authenticity makes a big difference. I think we like gospel music because it's authentic. I think we like some country music because it's authentic, it's real. And so authenticity really counts. And I would advise you to try to be real about what you do. Young artists, you get all your copyrights together. You register your copyrights if you can. You can put multiple song copyrights on one registration. You have to have that registration, that notice of registration in your folder because you can't sue for infringement unless you have that document. So it's important that you button it up. If you treat yourself and act as a professional, you'll be perceived as a professional. So when you go make a deal with a publishing company, you're making it publisher to publisher, not down and out songwriter with major publisher. It's different. It's different. You're not the little thing. You're the big thing. So you got to perceive yourself in that way before somebody else will. Most musicians won't do that, and most kids who make records do not know what they're going to do with them when they finish with them. So they start the process of making a recording without having any idea about what was going to happen to it when they finished it. And by the time they get finished with it, they don't want to deal with that, and it's almost too late. So you really should be making a recording as part of a bigger plan. Like it's part of a bigger arc. Like, okay, we're doing this. We're going to build up. We're going to get our money from Kickstarter. We're going to create our fan base. We're going to give them something in terms of merch if they give us money. $50. You give us $50. You get this. $100. You get that. You have a product line, and then you're going to release your record. In the old days, you would tour right after that, but you would have your tour. You'd have your social media marketing plan. Just pull the triggers like it's ready to go as soon as that record is ready to be posted through CD Baby or whatever to Spotify. Mm-hmm. And so it's one thing to get things in distribution. It's another thing to get people to come to those things that are in distribution. What?
You're saying so much helpful stuff. Like all the stuff that we were planning on asking you about, you've covered in different questions.
I kind of got my rap down at this point because I've been saying it for so long. And when I worked in the professional world with major artists, I was always surprised by how many people got taken advantage of. And, you're in those Wednesday divisional meetings where they make decisions with major companies, they make decisions about what's going to happen to an artist in a recording. So if you haven't achieved a certain level of what they think of as success in terms of radio play or streaming or performances or some kind of attention, they'll drop you and they won't even tell you. So you could be out on the road thinking you're out there, you're doing your thing and you're done. And so it's kind of sad. And I always thought that was and I saw so many creative people kind of hurt by that. And it's hard to recover from it. So you don't want to put yourself in the position of being hurt because it takes your creative energy. You kind of take that thing that's special about you and just kind of beat it up. Mm-hmm. And then they've done more than take your money. It's like, so you can't allow that. You can't give that up. You can't surrender that. You have to be true to yourself and respect yourself so that you don't send out the wrong message. No, it's tough to be the most difficult job in the world is to be a creative person, to make your money through the creation through creating new things. It's terribly rewarding when you have success at it. I had a young band that I was friends with, and they kind of kids back in the country from Louisiana, and nice kids and all that, but they made a record, and it was kind of lo-fi and kind of cool at the time, and they went out, and I never one of the kids told me, he said that we were in San Diego and playing for 10,000 people, and I kept hearing this, what I thought was feedback, and I couldn't figure what is all that sound, and it was the crowd singing along, singing their lyrics with the song. And so, you know, that's got to mean something. If you're up there playing and
Mhm.
everybody's singing your song, it's like, whew, that'll do it. And you know, and then what does that do? What do you do with that? You get high, or get what? I mean, what do you do after that concert? I mean, you what? How do you take that kind of responsibility and go forward with it?
Mhm.
Is just something you celebrate and get happy about, or is it something you now have to build on and advance? And I say you have to advance it. Anytime you go into a recording studio, you need to have a work for hire agreement and a splits agreement. Why? You don't want problems. If you go into a studio with a bunch of other people, if you go by yourself, you don't need these agreements. You might need with the engineer, but you may already have that agreement. That engineers are work for hire. They're not co-producing, not co-writing. Now, some producers do. And in Nashville, when you go into a room with another songwriter, whatever comes out is split 50-50. You know,
Mhm.
it's not, you may only get one verse out of it, but you're getting half the song because that's the way the deal is set up. But when you go into a studio, either you're aiming at failure or you're aiming at success. If you're aiming at success, you do not want any lack of clarity about who owns what. Because if you wait for success to determine that, somebody will not be happy. And so that slows everything down. ASCAP is out of the game because they've filed agreements. YouTube takes down your stuff. And so it's like all of a sudden, so that it just didn't work. But if you have a splits agreement, which is about who owns what of this song, who owns what of this recording, pretty simple. You know, you can say we're splitting it equally. There's administration rights to consider, whatever. But, you know, these in a work for hire agreement might be for the musicians or for the engineer. So when I made records with famous people, we hire musicians, you pay their money, and they sign a release saying you get to use their performances and their name and likeness. And they don't get any back end or any royalties or any ownership. That's a work for hire. So you do need these agreements, or you're going to get failure, which is okay.
Mhm.
You can hit that target, hard to miss it.
So yeah, any like just last words of advice for all of these young musicians trying to get into the industry?
Yeah, but produce, make music, make meaning, make money, um, and and I think that the first part is, you know, having the heart and the intellect to express it and the
Mhm.
words to express it. So, you know, everything is not up here. If you're going to make money from your imagination, it's what you put in there that's going to come out.
Mhm.
So you should definitely, it's like eat healthy, but you also have to experience healthy. You have to read. I know that people don't want to do that, but that's the key to success.
Mhm.
And you have to learn, and you have to have a curiosity that is never going to be satisfied. And so if
Yeah.
you don't have these things really, and you can be honest with yourself, I don't really feel that way. You got to get a job. Man. I mean, you got to go to be a dentist or something, but you can't relax as that creative person. Um, and so the way you make meaning is that you you care about the expression and the consequences of it on other people, not just on yourself. The money part comes in the business of it. So you know you kind of need to produce, release, produce. You know, iterate, celebrate, iterate, celebrate. You've got to always be trying to do better, and you can measure success through data and metrics. And you should have familiarity with Google Analytics and how metrics work, and how you can use that data to monetize what you do. Um, if you think of it as a business and you put 2 hours at it every day, and you put 2 hours of creating, and you put whatever else you have to do in your life, um, you know you can create a discipline of, of content creation that will, if you keep going and keep at it and keep learning and keep focusing on the business, you got a real good chance of being successful.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We had an amazing time talking to John. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes.
Uh,
So much brilliance and a library of knowledge. Oh my gosh. That was great.
Let me know if I can help you.
If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go back and listen to our past ones and the ones that come out every Saturday. Please follow us on Instagram at ETMS Podcast. And yeah, just thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, y'all.